All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to an amazing workshop that's being hosted by Tiffany, and I'll be in the co-host seat, helping her along, and we'll be coming together to kind of have conversations around the work that we're doing and how our expertise can help NGOs grow. This workshop is titled Balanced Impact on how we can help NGOs manage the stress and empower themselves on that journey. Tiffany is also going to be one of the expert speakers for Freedom Fiesta, and this is a wonderful introduction for you guys to her,
Yeah.
and I'm excited. Tiffany, go ahead and introduce yourself, my love, and then we can. I'll introduce myself, and we'll get started after you.
It's so funny because I thought we were co-hosting. I didn't
Yes.
realize it was. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Tiffany Zehara. I work with marginalized businesses that are facing additional stigmas and just regulations from society, the government, and just really trying to do all the amazing things that they want to do in the world, uplift the world in so many amazing ways with their unique gifts, but they're continuing to face just challenges and barriers. And so I help you be strong as a business so that you can do all those amazing things without the stress, without the burnout, so that you can really make your mark on the world. So,
Love that. Love
in
that.
a nutshell.
Yes. Oh my God, that's so amazing. And you'll get to know more about her as we progress. Her personality really shines through, you guys. It's gonna be an amazing workshop. I'm excited. All
Thank
right.
you.
Yes. All right, so quick introduction about me. Who am I? I am Madhurima. My name goes like a wave, so it's Madhurima. Madhurima. I am a global stress management facilitator who loves to support multi-passionate, ambitious dreamers, basically people who are often considered mad by society. Change makers and leaders definitely fall into that category. And I love to support them by helping them manage the stress and prevent burnout so that they can do all the things they want to do, achieve their dreams without their own selves holding them back. I'm on a mission to make stress management fun because a lot of people consider stress management to be this really bad, dreary thing that's going to take time away from their personal and professional lives. I don't believe that. I think that only ever happens when you're in a space of burnout and you actually have to take that step back and recuperate and work on yourself and get back to normal before you go back into the work field. So, before we end up reaching that space of burnout, it's better to kind of work on your stress so that you don't end up there, and I help you do that in a fun and exciting way. So that's a bit about me, and that's why I wanted to kind of collaborate with Tiffany Zahara here and have a conversation on what we can do for the NGOs, for the amazing people who are being selfless out there and creating a better world for us every single day. Absolutely love that. Now, Tiffany, for the viewers who are watching this, why NGOs? Like, why are you an expert on NGOs? What's your experience in that field?
I came from that world. That's why that's why I do what I do now, because I was just so stressed, so burnt out, like so many of you that are in the charitable sector that are overworked, underpaid. You're putting in all this time, this effort. You love what you do, but yet again, you're still not making enough to survive. Um, you are paycheck to paycheck, if you're even clearing your bills each paycheck. And I'm not talking about the fancy things. I'm talking about just, again, being able to keep the lights on, be able to keep that roof over your head, because the prices are going up. And especially in the charitable sector, it's not always matching the cost of living. Charities are trying, NGO spaces are trying, nonprofits are trying. But at the same time, depending on their budget, not working out. So I worked in that world for 12, 15 years. It was a while. It was a while.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when I graduated with my master's degree, I mean, how many of you can relate to this? We're all like, oh, you're going to get a degree and you're going to just have all these doors open for you. All these things are going to be great. And then you actually get your degree and then you're like, okay, now what? No one's hiring me. Even though I had professional experience because I was working throughout my master's. It wasn't like internships.
Mm.
I was working, I had a career, not even just, oh, I was waiting tables. I was in a career. I had established myself. And yet, all these opportunities didn't just fling open like they were promised to all of us that can relate to this.
Yeah.
And so when I graduated, I had all this student loan debt that needed to be paid off. And not that it all happened to be paid off at once, but like the creditors were like, okay, we credited you this amount for your loans. Now, even if it was just income based, it was still an amount that I wasn't being factored in. And when you're struggling to, again, have that roof over your head, have the lights on, put food on the table, especially how expensive food is now. And this was a different story back then, but it was still, it was still very, very different. And so when you're struggling to make ends meet, and then you have another bill because of student loans that, you just can't, like, what are you going to do? So I started working as a janitor at night. I was in a very, very professional setting all day. I was in front of judges, working with lawyers, doing all these amazing, amazing things. And yet I was scrubbing toilets with a master's degree at night because I needed that extra money to, again, be able to pay student loans, pay my life. And again, not the luxuries. This is just basic necessities. And it was tough because, according to the student loan departments, oh no, you should be able to, like, you're not quite qualifying for that continued deferment. You're not like, oh no, everything should be fine, but it's not. And so when you're in this catch-22, so all this to say, I was overworked, underpaid. I got sick. I had just been go, 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 go for so long with a promise of all these opportunities that would be happening. And I'm not saying like I walked across the stage at graduation for my graduate degree and was going to have all these opportunities lined up. But within a reasonable time frame, I thought that there would still be all these opportunities like there was when I had my undergraduate degree. Totally different story with graduate school. And so I had been, just going, going, going. And then it finally caught up with me. And so I just was so sick that I was barely making it through the day, if I was making it through the day at all. And so I was looking, and this was years ago when the opportunities were not what they used to be or what they are now for work from home. And so work from home options were customer service. And the customer service I knew was just going to be more soul sucking, more stressful. But I was like, but I can do it from my couch or I can do it from bed. But it was like this weird catch-22. And so that's when I started to really look at entrepreneurship and other business opportunities. What could I do? So that's kind of that journey of going from the charitable sector into becoming a business owner, because it's this weird situation where I was always told that if you want to make a difference in the world, you work for a nonprofit. I mean, maybe you start one, but you work for one. And that's not the reality. You can make an amazing impact in the world in so many different ways. It doesn't have to be pigeonholed like what we have constantly been told from society, from especially our schooling, that this is the only way to make a difference in the world. This is the only way to make that positive impact that you want.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. First of all, that was a really powerful journey and really relatable in the sense that I think everyone is in that scenario right now. And that fear of just the rising prices and what that means to having a lifestyle that you can sustain and maintain it's kind of crazy. And once again, we're not even talking about luxury based stuff. We're talking about basic necessities for human beings. And I'm sorry that you went through that. And so
there's no reason to be sorry, because that's the whole thing. This is the learning experience. We all take the things that it's it everything is happening for our highest and best good. And it
Mm-hmm.
may seem super, super stressful in the moment. You may not know how to get out of the situation. But then in hindsight, when you start to look back and you're like, that's why that happened.
Mm.
I needed to impart this wisdom on this scenario to others, or I needed to experience this so that I could have more compassion in this situation, or whatever the situation is. This is all for our highest and best good. So it's not something that, oh, I should feel sorry for somebody. I mean, whatever it is, like,
Yeah. No, I hear you. That makes sense.
we're all having these experiences for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. One of the things that Arkai, he's my brother and Tiffany's and my mutual friend in a way.
Yeah.
He always says this, hindsight is 2020. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
I always laugh at him when he says that, but also that makes a lot of sense because he says that when he's making jokes. But also that's a really powerful thing. And so I absolutely love that. And so, Tiffany, I want to reflect back here based on what you shared about NGOs. You mentioned that you are overworked, underpaid, and there were also a lot of, would you say there were false promises as to this is going to be the reality or really high expectations, and then the reality coming in and just sucker punching you into being like, come back to where we are right now? Because what I'm trying to understand is it the system that needs to change, or is it what needs to happen? Because right now all you and I can do during this workshop is have conversations, which is really important,
Right.
build awareness, which is once again important, and then
Right.
kickstart something like a spark or two to kind of get the conversation going and create small changes. And so what
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to understand here from your experiences, is it
Mm-hmm.
the system that needs to change, or is it something else that the focus needs to be on?
Right. So there's a couple things here that I want to unpack. So first of all, we need to remember that colleges and universities are businesses. So they're going to have all these promises of, oh yes, this degree is going to open up all these things. And, I was in a very professional career when I was in grad school, and they're like, oh, why are you getting your degree in that? And I was like, well, I'm on a specific track. So I was on the academic track, and I was working in, the professional setting in terms of professional titles. And so because I wasn't doing something that was a little bit more specialized, it was seen as like, well, what are you going to do with that? You're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to do that. So it was like this push and pull of like, okay, this is a useless degree from like my professional side. But then there was the actual university of like, all these things you can do with it and blah, 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 blah. I don't regret in any way what I actually got my degree in. I always joke that I didn't learn how to read and write until grad school. The amount of skills that were sharpened were just amazing. I learned so much, way more than I did in undergrad. Undergrad is like you're tasting the buffet, you're tasting the things. But grad school's more, what you like, and you're sitting down and ordering it for your meal. And because your palate's a little bit more refined. So when it comes to what is wrong, I think we need to remember, because a lot of the times we don't remember that when we're going into um, figuring out our life. We're just encouraged, especially those of us from a certain generation. We're just encouraged, I hate to say it like this, but keep getting degrees and all these other options are going to be open to you. And obviously that's not the case. But we need to remember that, again, it is a business and they're going to encourage things, but you need to do your due diligence and figure out, is this right for me? Is this what I really want? And it's going to change. It's going to completely change. So that's something that we need to bear in mind, because we don't always do that because we have been spoon-fed that just degrees are the ticket out of things so often. When it comes to the burnout specifically with, oh, by the way, for my degree was in global gender studies. So it was, again, very much an academic research, teaching, like this is what it was. But again, for those of us who wanted to do, work with the UN, work with, Human Rights Watch, all these big name organizations that are super hard to get into. It's like, oh yes, this degree will help you, and if you do all these other things and just all this other stuff, I think we need to be a little bit more um, mindful of what is actually happening. Again, it's these businesses that are trying to encourage you to go this route, and listening to your own wisdom. And if schooling is the right thing for you, awesome. I'm not discouraging that in any way, shape, or form, but I also want you to be mindful of the realities. And I know that Archive says, hindsight's always 2020. I always say, I have no regrets, because in that moment, with the knowledge that I had, I made the exact right decisions that I was supposed to make at that time, with the knowledge that I had. Of course, hindsight's 2020. I have more knowledge and information now. Would I do things a little bit differently? Maybe, maybe not. But at that time, with what I knew, it's different. And I think that that's the importance of this conversation, is to open people's awareness of what the realities are. Now, when it comes to the charitable sector and nonprofits and NGOs and all of the do-goody stuff, yes, the system is broken. I'm going to say something super, super controversial and probably going to get ripped to shreds for this. But there's just too many nonprofits and charitable organizations and all of, this bucket, because there's just more of a competition than collaboration. We're losing sight of what we're actually trying to do because people want to do it their way. Because these are the when I first started my business, I was working specifically with nonprofits. And I would hear, especially those that were starting, when I would have the conversation of, well, have you thought about combining and joining forces with other organizations that are in your area or wherever you're trying to work? Yeah, but I want to do things a little different. I want to kind of do things my way. And when you are in a position where you're constantly begging for donor dollars and constantly on, again, that begging side, it's very, very different. Now, I am not saying that if you want to do that, start a social enterprise, start something that is business that is still doing amazing things in the world. I really believe that it's entrepreneurship that's going to make the difference, not just constantly handing out. Not that I'm saying that nonprofits and charities do not have a place. I think we just need to re-examine the system, re-look at the whole way it's structured, because it's that empowerment for so many that's needed, and not just constantly handing out. There's, of course, the importance. There is the need to have the resources handed at a certain period of time. But when that's continuing, that's not helping. It's, okay, how are we actually empowering those that are looking for support? And are they really just wanting handouts all the time? Because most of the time it's not. But you're so locked into a system because this is how we've always done it. And when you are locked into these bureaucracies, we don't want to actually ruffle any feathers or make any changes. This is just what it is. That's what we really need to look at.
Yeah. I think you touched upon some really powerful points, and I'm going to kind of like touch back on them, is the fact that colleges are businesses, and you need to kind of fact check Like, is it an
Yes.
assumption or is it a fact that these things are going to happen? And what is the probability of your promises coming into reality? I think those are some really important questions that you need to ask
Yeah.
colleges, because, and I think beyond, I think this is really important to understand as well, is that you won't get, like, there is no certainty in
Mm.
situations like that, because you don't know what organizations were going to come to the colleges for placements are going to look like, and if you are a good fit for them. If you're not, they're not going to hire you. They're not going to waste resources on hiring someone that's not a good fit. I'm not saying that you suck as an individual. It's just that maybe your values and their values are different, and that's completely okay. And I think at the end of the day, there is certain amount of certainty, but beyond that, it's all left up to what the situation looks like, what are the circumstances around the situation. I think that's really important to understand as well. I'm not kind of beating you guys down. I'm just telling you the reality, because I was one of the top students of my own college and I didn't get placed. I didn't. I tried. And then there were people who barely showed up to classes and they were getting placed in
Mhm.
managerial roles. And so that's the harsh reality. Sometimes there's no certainty in situations like these, and outside of moving through your emotions and accepting the situation, there's not much you can do in a scenario like that. So I think it's really important to acknowledge and understand that there are going to be chances that you won't get placed. And if that does happen, it's working for your highest benefit. You just need to figure out what your aim is, what you need to work on, especially with high. I think we all kind of get dazzled by the big organizations, like, ooh, the
Mm.
United Nations, and ooh, this and
Yeah.
ooh, that. Like, we do get into that space. But then I remember there was a similar thing happening for me in the hotel industries, and I was getting dazzled by all these big organizations. But then when I
Mhm.
was going through what they were doing, I was like, that seems cool. Doesn't seem like my vibe though. Like,
Yeah.
like, there were organizations that were like, here's a box, you need to be in this box and then you will
Yes.
flourish. And then I was just like, i hate I detest with every cell in my being, I hate being put into boxes. I have been
Right.
That has happened to me a lot of times. Like, this is all you can do, so stay here and don't run away, and you will, oh, we promise goals and riches to you if you stay in this box. And I'm like,
Mhm.
been there, done that. Doesn't really
Yeah.
happen. Even if it does, you have to wait like ages for scenarios like that to happen. And I'm not very patient with that kind of things. Like, I'm like,
Mhm.
I want it, I'm gonna work towards getting it,
Right.
right? And so I think that's really important to consider, that after a point of time you need to understand the certainties and realities of the situations, which once again is important to look into. Like, when you are choosing an educational system, will that educational system help you reach your goals? And what's the probability of those systems helping you reach those goals and helping you get into organizations like these? And if they don't, what are your other options? Which is something that I always tell people, like, always have at least plan B and plan C to reach your milestone, right? You never know which. It's like, there are three routes to reach from point A to point B. If the road B that you were going to take, which was a linear path, shortest path to get there, and that road is blocked off, you then have route A and C to kind of work through, right? Like, you have different
Right.
routes to kind of move through. And so having those roads and having an understanding of what are the different scenarios that can help you get into organizations that you want to work with is really important. And having that ahead of time, not like last minute preparation, I'm gonna figure it out. Like, yeah, sometimes it doesn't work out when you try to do it last minute. Oftentimes it does, and you get excited and hyped because, hey, I did that last minute. But that's just like, you in that rush of adrenaline, figuring out scenarios and situations, which often works, but also prepare ahead of time so you're not in that space of frustration and stress. Now,
Yeah.
when it comes to NGOs, and I hear you on that aspect of us trying to be autonomous in our journey, like, we have the autonomy of choosing what we want. And in scenarios like that, you kind of want to shape things your way. And so
Mhm.
I think what, from my understanding of what you were saying, Tiffany, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
it's like you start off with an entrepreneurial vision to setting up the NGOs and nonprofits and working through it. You start with an entrepreneurial vision and perspective, but you're running the business using the old traditional systems. And so that doesn't really kind of match oftentimes. So you're still working the old systems, you're not running it like a business, which I think is important, that you need to run it like a business to kind of move things around and float things around for that change and evolution and innovation to occur. But you're just
Mhm.
looking at it from like, I'm gonna do things differently, but also you're still following the old systems and not trying to kind of
Mhm.
deviate from them. You're
The
walking at
one
the same
correction I would have about that though is that when you're saying that entrepreneurial vision, they're not having that entrepreneurial vision. They're like, I want to make a difference. I want to make a change. I'm going to do it this way, but I'm going to do it with the old system.
Hmm.
Entrepreneurship is all about innovation
Right.
and creativity and thinking outside the box and pushing those boundaries and doing all of those things. So that's the only correction I would have about what you were saying is
Yeah.
there is that at I would say at any point in forming one of these organizations, it's like, okay, this is what I've looked at, this is what I can bring to the table, this is what I'm going to do. Um, this is why I want to do it. But again, it's okay, now I need to get donors. Okay, now I
Hmm.
need to have fundraisers. Now, again, it's stuff, the same stuff. And it doesn't have to be like that. People get all up in their heads about what for profit and nonprofit means. Nonprofit doesn't mean broke, because that's what was regurgitated to me when I first started. Um, it was right after the market crashed in the middle of 2000s. And it was like we couldn't afford pens. We had to buy our own pens. The company couldn't afford pens. And this is again was not when we all had a computer, so pens were important. So because we needed to actually document stuff, so it was always okay. Nonprofit equals poor. That was always the whole thing.
Is
And
it
it's
true
not what
though?
that means. That's not what that means. It just means that you don't carry over the profit. Like that's all that means. It's when we are having that mindset, that poverty mindset, we're not getting the right staff. We're overburdening the staff that we have. You know, there's this touting of work-life balance, which I freaking hate. It's just so frustrating. Um, you should love what you do, and there shouldn't really be a need to divide. You know,
Hmm.
it should just be, I don't know, it should just be something that's life.
Yeah.
Um, you know, this is something I have to do versus this is something I want to do. Why can't it just be life?
Hmm.
You know, I just,
Yeah.
yeah. So I have frustrations with that. But there's we can't afford to pay our people more. Well, you can, but you're not thinking in the ways that you need to that are different than what has always been done. And that's the problem. Is it can happen. It's just not that's just not happening.
Hmm.
And again, it's just something that's different. And of
Hmm.
course, depending who sits on your board, you're going to potentially have more pushback than if you have more progressive seats at the table. But that's also another conversation you need to
Yeah.
have. Because do you want to then have to, you know, be bought out? Like, I mean, you're not going to be sustainable if you're not thinking innovatively.
Hmm.
And that means not perpetuating everything that's been done before.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So explain to me what nonprofit is very quickly, just so that we have a clear understanding. Because I think we have spoken a lot about the theory side of things and given our perspectives on different
Right.
situations. I would like to now shift the conversation to more practical side of things. But before we jump into that, just a quick, in a way, to ground ourselves and to kind of get started on what are some of the ways that we can go about this. Tell
Mhm.
me, what is your perspective and what nonprofit means, basically?
Nonprofit just means you don't carry those funds, those extra funds over. Like
What does
that's
that
just
mean?
what that means. So like over to the next year, whatever that year looks like in
Mm-hmm.
your organization, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's a calendar year, fiscal year, whatever. You're just not carrying the funds over. There's not that excess in the coffers. That's all that means. That doesn't mean that you're not having a livable wage. That doesn't mean that you're not bringing on the qualified staff to take the organization to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
It's often, though, what is thought about of, oh, we can't. And it's constantly that perpetuation of we're broke, we don't have enough money. It's that shift of the money mindset that's talked about so much in entrepreneurial spaces and for-profit spaces, but thought of so differently. And the charitable, no, it's the same thing. It is the same thing. When you're constantly talking about begging your donors, begging the grantees, begging constantly, it's the poverty mindset. It's that lack mindset.
Mm.
And it doesn't have to be that way. So
Makes
I don't
sense.
know if that answers your question a little
It
bit
does.
more.
It does. It does. It does. There's a lot more clarity now. I'm not gonna lie. All right. So let's shift into the practical side of things. What differences can we make in the current kind of environment, in the current system that is already existing? What are some tiny changes that we can make that can, with consistency, have a huge impact? And I think the very first thing that you were speaking about is something we can definitely bring in is the money mindset. Now, I'm going to come in from the stress management perspective, and Tiffany is going to
Mhm.
come in from her experience of working in the NGO side and also being someone who now helps businesses flourish and succeed in their
Mhm.
spaces. So we're going to have two different perspectives in the scenario, and we invite you, the watchers of this workshop, to kind of comment in the comment section to tell us your perspective on these topics. What are your thoughts? Do you kind of agree? What are your takeaways? If you don't agree, what are some of the points that you would like to raise when you don't agree? Because we would like to,
Yeah,
once again, keep this conversation going. This conversation doesn't need to end here. We
right.
need to keep the conversation going if we want to make change, and not just leave it at that, but also act upon the
Right.
conversation we are
Right.
having. So let's get started. I think with money mindset, and my understanding of it is I have been in that money mindset of poverty because,
Mhm.
once again, colonialism. I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
But also the concept of generational trauma, because
Yes.
oftentimes generational trauma, societal trauma, because a lot of
Yeah.
times we have that belief of, hey, and I hated this phrase since I was a kid, but there's this phrase in Hindi which basically translates to only ask for what you can have, don't ask for more,
Yeah.
right? Like it's
I
basically,
think every culture has some variation of that. Yes.
right, it's like
Yes.
only spread your legs as far as the blanket goes, not beyond that, because if you do,
Right.
then the blanket's not going to cover your legs and you're going to be out in the cold, right?
Right.
And I hated that because I was like, why not get a bigger blanket? Right, like at the end of the day, why not get a bigger
Right.
blanket? But like, no, that was frowned
Mhm.
upon. And we have often, oh gosh, I can't even tell you how many times we have heard different versions of stories of money is evil, too much money is bad, it's going to spoil your character, it's going to spoil your principles, your morals and values will go down the drain. And we have been hearing versions of these stories propagated by media for such a long time, and propagated, and all the stories that we have learned is that for a really long time I believed that. I was like, oh, I don't want money, I don't want too much money, I'm happy with what I have. And then there came a point where I was like, but I do want more. I do want to
Mhm.
live a life of luxury because I deserve it, but not luxury in the way that I want all, I want to sleep in a bathtub full of gold coins and stuff like it's a
Mhm.
dream. Like, I do want to be like Flynn Rider in Tangled, surrounded by money, but also like that's like a fantasy. That's not like the kind of life I want. I also want to live a life which is very sustainable, that wants to create change for people. Like, Tiffany, you don't know this, but this was one of the things that I have been working over, is potentially creating an eco village 5 to 6 years down the line here in India, where people are living a stress free life, and we are creating that environment where the community is being built and we are supporting each other. And my mom, oh gosh, she was like, you do whatever you want to do, but make sure that you employ the local people over there, because you don't want to drive them out of their jobs. You want to help grow with them, like not without
Yeah.
them. You just don't want to create a community filled with rich people who are living a happy life, and outside of your boundary of an eco village you have people who are struggling. You don't want that kind of lifestyle. And she comes from the social work background, so I have a
Yeah.
couple of things that she mentioned when I was talking about this workshop with her as well. But excuse me, but she did say that, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Like, you want to grow with people, but to potentially create an environment like that, potentially create a space like that to host people, to create a space where there's no stress, where we are growing our own stuff, where we are involving each other, you need to have money. Let's be real,
Mhm.
right? Like, if I want a sustainable lifestyle, I'll potentially want to have rain harvesting and solar panels and all of those things, but they don't
Mhm.
come in cheap. They don't.
I
I
actually
have
have a
worked.
contact for you, so don't let me forget. I have a contact for you
I'll
for
let you
this.
know. I'll let you know. But yeah,
Yes.
I've worked in the solar industry. I know how expensive
Mhm.
solar panels can get, especially for huge spaces when you want to kind of
Right.
power up an entire space that's potentially going to be as big as an eco village.
Yeah.
You need resources. And I think for a
Mhm.
really long time I was in the space of money is evil and money is bad. And I was like, why am I thinking this way? Money is just a form
Mhm.
of currency, it's just a form of exchange. Back in the day when barter system was existing, you didn't need money. You were basically trading services and trading products. At that point of time, you weren't taking grain from someone else in regards to, like, I'm giving you a stress management session and they're giving me grain instead. I'm not gonna look at the
Mhm.
grain and be like, oh, you so evil. You're gonna feed me, but oh, you so evil. Like, that's not gonna happen. I'm not gonna be in that space, because I understand the fact that at the end of the day, it's just currency, it's just energy, it's just me sustaining my life. It's a resource that I can tap into whenever I want. You don't look at energy and go, oh, I have excess energy. That's so bad.
But you know where this comes from.
I do.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
It's those
Yeah.
systems, right? Like, you don't go,
Mhm.
you don't look at time and go, oh, I have too much time. That's bad, right? But we do also have those mindsets where too much time, you're not doing work, you need to fill it up with hobbies. You can't do nothing, you need to do something, because how else
Mhm.
are you gonna fill up your space? And there are all these mindsets, and all these mindsets are deeply rooted to beliefs that have been created for a really long time, and people are going to frown upon you when you come up with these beliefs, when you're going to change these beliefs. A lot of people are going to look at you and be like, why are you changing? That doesn't make any sense. But internally, you know the truth that it does make sense. Why am I conforming to these beliefs that do not serve me? And so for me, I realized that that mindset of poverty, that mindset of I don't need money, I don't need too
Mhm.
much money, I need just enough to sustain me, just enough to pull me over into the next month, just enough for
Mhm.
me to have like a couple of you know going out to restaurant or ordering in food once or twice a month with my family. That is enough. If I am living in that mindset, I'm going to be constantly stressed out about money, because money was
Mhm.
a big 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 stressor in my life, right? I was
Mhm.
constantly being like, where is the next paycheck gonna come from, where is the next this gonna come from, how am I gonna sustain my family? And I realized that if I had ideal and ample amount of money, I wouldn't be stressed out about this. And for
Mhm.
that to happen, for me to get in those sources of money and for me to accept those sources of money, I need to shift my mindset around it. If I
Yeah.
want to help people, because I want to help people, I love being in service of people. If I want to help people, I need to make sure that my family is not dying of hunger while I'm helping people manage
Exactly.
their stress. That is not the energy you want to go in from. I have
That doesn't
lived
help
that
anybody.
life. Yeah, I have lived that
Yeah.
life. I kid you not. My dad, bless his soul, so amazing. He was an amazing individual, but he was also that person who was like, I will constantly give to other people,
Mhm.
constantly serve others, no matter what's happening in the house. And I'm not saying I lived like a poverty lifestyle. He took care of us. He was an amazing dad. But I also recognize the fact that there was a lot of money going out of the house without a lot of staying in the house to kind of create our own dreams, to create our own realities. And I'm not judging him. I recognize where he's coming from, because that same blood runs through me, those same visions run through me. But I also understand the necessity of being like, I don't want to be in a space where I'm edging and reaching for money and wondering where it's going to come from. And so, if you're stressed out about money, if you are an NGO founder, or if you are someone in the directorial side of things, if you are a change maker, if you have someone who has decision making power, you need to think about how you can give from the overflow, right? If this is
Mhm.
your cup and there's money flowing in, you need to ensure that your cup is full, and whatever excess of it is there, that's
Mhm.
flowing out of your cup, that's going into your business, that's going into charities. You need to ensure that your cup is filling up, that you don't need to overturn your cup to sustain lifestyles, to sustain. I just hit my hand because I was so passionate about this. uh, but you don't need to overturn your cup. And you guys
Yeah.
know, I know who I'm speaking to. I know you guys who are watching this are people who are very similar to me in the space of, I will do everything in my power to give to everyone around me,
Right.
no matter what happens to me. Get out of that mindset. You need to care for yourself, right? If you
Mhm.
are in a mindset of, no matter what happens to me, you are going to fail, you're not going to get that vision across successfully, because someone else will potentially have to pick up where you left off, because you're
Yeah.
not going to survive. You
Right.
need to
Exactly.
survive, and not just survive, you need to thrive to make this business to run. Because if money is one of your biggest stressor, let me tell you a reality. This is really harsh reality, but it is reality. Is, over time, you will start hating the very work that you're passionate about.
Yes.
You will
Yes.
hate it with a passion. You will be like, fuck this shit, I'm gonna let it go, and I'm gonna do whatever I want to do, right? I have been there. I have gone through such a bad burnout that I, a writer, hated the concept of writing. I wanted to chuck
Mhm.
my laptop every time I got a request to write. I
Yeah.
wanted to do that because I was burnt out and I hated it.
Mhm.
And you don't want to
Yeah.
be in a space like that. And reality of the situation is 60% of people who are passionate about what they do burn out if
Mhm.
they don't learn to manage their resources properly. One of those resources is money. You need to learn
Yes.
to manage your money, and you need to learn to have a new mindset around it. That mindset of, no matter what happens, it's not going to work. My mom says this, and I'm going to leave it at that and then hand the mic off to Tiffany. My mom says this. She says, Ami bachle bapet naam, which is a Bengali phrase that she's always told me, especially when I used to get stressed out, which basically translates to, if you live today, only then can you prosper your dad's name. Once again, a
Mm.
translation of that is, if you live today, only then can you make your vision into a reality. Only then can that
Mm.
dream turn into something that you can stand there and be in that space and say that, oh, this is what I was dreaming about.
Yeah.
This is where
Yeah.
this is why I'm doing all these things. Like, this is the point of
Yeah.
success, where I'm looking around and being like, this is it. This is why I've been working so hard. This is why I've been busting my ass to reach this point.
Mhm.
For that to happen, you need to survive today. You just don't need to survive, you need to thrive in today, right? We are not, let that mindset go of survival. You're
Yeah.
not surviving. If you are in that survival mind space, you are constantly going to keep reaching for stuff, keep wanting
Mhm.
stuff. You don't want to be in that space. You deserve so much better. I know the
Mhm.
people I'm talking to right now, they are smart, intelligent people who are here to make a change, who are here to make a difference. You don't want
Mhm.
to be in a space where your hands are like this, constantly waiting,
Yes.
right? You want to be in a space which is exactly what you're doing. Your hands need to be like this, where you're giving. You're giving to
Mhm.
people. That's the entire purpose of the work that you're doing, is you're giving to people. You're not doing this, right? You need
Right.
to shift that mindset. You need to let go of the survival mindset and the poverty mindset of money. Like,
Mhm.
I'm happy. I at least paid for my food. I at least ate one meal a day. Like, get rid of that mindset. You need
Yeah.
to survive and you need to thrive if you want to continue on this path and create the change that you want to see. With that, I'm
Mhm.
going to hand off the mic to Tiffany. Tiffany, comment from your own perspective on this concept of money mindset.
I think that it came from the charitable sector in general came from, um, if I'm remembering historically speaking, the woman couldn't work. The men were doing the business. And well, the women had to have something to do. And so this was something that was all volunteer based because the husbands were bringing in the money. And so that may have been the case when things started. But again, this is the whole point of when we're not evolving with the times, we're still perpetuating that cycle. How far are we really advancing? Are we actually hurting those that we're trying to help? Because I don't think that we think about that enough. We're just perpetuating what's always been done, but we're doing damage. And we need to really shift the perspective so that we're really helping. And what is helping? It's empowering. It's not just here, 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 here all the time, because that's not empowering you to have a life where you are thriving. Here, here, here is just survival.
Hmm.
And we're all meant to thrive, every single one of us. But success looks differently for each of us. For those of you that want the mansions and the 50 cars in the driveway, awesome for you. But that's not for everybody. You know, some people are just super, super content traveling all the time, having a suitcase or two, just lying on the beach, doing work in a hammock. And that's success. And whatever success looks like for you is beautiful and it's perfect. And we need to stop dampering the spirit of who we are and what we want out of life.
That makes a lot of sense, Tiffany. Thank you so much for that. Let's kind of shift gears. Tell me another
Mhm.
reason why people in the NGO and nonprofit sector experience stress. We can work on these stresses one at a time and kind of move
Yeah.
along it. I do have one suggestion from my mom that we can speak at the end of it, but I would love to hear what are some other things that we can work through. We have spoken so far about the money mindset side of things. And yeah, go
Well, the
for it.
biggest problem is the overwork and underpayment. And that's because we can't hire more staff. We don't have the budget and we don't have the budget to compensate you. So we're just going to keep dumping more things on your plate.
Mm-hmm.
And that just again goes back into the money mindset of like we're it's not even just the money mindset, but also the practical way of how we're running the business
Hmm.
and how we can shift things so that we're looking at things differently and we're taking new steps so that it doesn't have to be this constant lack, can't afford, have to constantly cut, have to constantly do layoffs, can't, do any of these types of things.
Hmm.
It's how we're looking at nonprofits and charities in general. That is, again, that old system that needs to change. It's a broken system that served itself at one point in time, but we are way past that, 100 plus years past where we began.
Hmm.
And we need to start looking at things for where we want things to go, what we really want the world to look like. And a lot of that's empowerment
Yeah.
and not, again, the begging constantly for sustainability as an organization, but also as individuals, thriving as individuals.
That makes a lot of
Um,
sense.
so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And what would be one actionable step for this overworked and underpaid situation that you would like to kind of give to NGOs and people in that space?
I think honestly, a practical step is really having strong conversations with your board on um, having the right people in positions and what do we need to do? Because again, if it's that, I'm trying to think of a first right step. I mean, it's really getting the right board members in. I
Mm-hmm.
think that would be actually even a better. I think that would be more of the first step of having the right board members at your table, because so often you don't have the right board members that are going to then make the changes that need to happen. So I think really it's having those conversations on what you want from the organization as
Yeah.
a collective and who do you need to have at that table to really move the needle. Now,
Yeah.
all that to say, if you have internal board issues, this is where you seek outside support. If there is, because this happens all the time, or there will be the organizations that specifically structure their board so that they're just constantly yes people to
Mm-hmm.
whatever the executive director is saying is very much people in their pocket, not challenging them. Or there would be so many challenges at that table that you're not making any progress. Um, but again, this is where you have outside consultants. I don't do this work anymore, but outside consultants, outside support to really take that honest look, that critical look to make sure that you are going in the direction that you want. And when you can't do it internally, you need to have that neutral outside perspective to make those suggestions. But it's not just, okay, have those suggestions and then fall on deaf ears. But how are we going to take these suggestions and really implement them? So
Yeah.
you really need to want to make the change. And so many times people are like, yes, yes, yes. And then when suggestions get brought to you, because this is why I don't do this work anymore, because I was that person. And then it was like, oh, this, oh, that. I have to take
Yeah.
this to committee. I have to take that to committee. And nobody really wanted to make any changes.
Yeah.
So there's that internal work that you need to do
That makes
as a
sense.
person, as an organization,
Yeah.
to then make those changes.
I think that's a very beautiful point, and I think that restructuring sometimes is really necessary, especially if the people in your organization do not align with your values, do not align with the vision that you want to take your company to. And at the end of the day, it starts with, well, are you as an individual ready to shift? Are you as an individual ready to make those changes in yourself? And can you present this to your organization and invite change to occur? Invite people to let go of those old beliefs. And if they can't, are you in a space to let them go and bring in new perspectives and new faces? That needs to happen. And I know change is so stressful. It can be very
Yeah.
annoying because you are like, well, things have been working so far. Why do we need to change? You're once again in
Or
that
people are
survival.
still under contract of,
Yes.
oh, they're still here for 2 more years. What do I
Ah,
do?
yes,
Yeah.
you can have a
Mhm.
lot of excuses if you go around looking for excuses. I'm going to say this
Mhm.
one more time. You can have a lot of excuses if you go around looking for excuses. Stop looking for excuses. If you want
Mhm.
your business, which an NGO and a nonprofit is a business, let's be real, it is a business. You're simply talking about the profit side of things when you talk about NGOs and nonprofits. It is still a business. If you want your business to sustain and move forward and evolve and grow
Mhm.
and continue doing the work that you're doing, you need
Mhm.
to shift your perspective. You need to stop looking for excuses. Because if you're looking for excuses, leave this conversation right now, leave this workshop right now. If at the end of all our conversation, you're going to be like, yes, but you know what? We have this to work through, we have work through it, figure it out, because you got to sustain this business. You have not only the people you want to support, but you also have your team members that you need to support. Remember that this is not a one man army of you just going through things and people just sticking around, people will leave no matter how passionate they are about this job. If after a point of time they realize that this is not helping me, I'm giving way too much of me, I'm not getting enough back. Tiffany
Yeah.
is an example of that. I'm sorry to kind of like bring back your experience here, Tiffany, but she is an example of that. She gave too much of herself and was not receiving enough. It stressed her out, burnt her out. Eventually, even the most passionate, even the people who are here to make a change are going to leave because they are not
Mhm.
getting what they need, basic necessities. That is not being matched and they will leave. With that, I think I want to bring in one last suggestion that my mom also mentioned is having a community of people to talk to is really crucial. Like you need to
Mhm.
have she was telling me that in her experience of working in the social work industry, a lot of times she was constantly overworking herself and she did not have anyone to speak to about her experiences and have conversation and hold space for her. So that is, I think, another way you can kind of start creating small shifts in the system. You bring in new perspective, you have new mindset, you bring in new people, and you hold space. You create support systems for the people who already exist. I think that's really crucial. Tiffany, I'm gonna head it off to you because I think we've been way over time. And so I'm gonna give it off to you. What are your final tips in the space to kind of create that shift and at least have these conversations going?
I think I'm going to do a shameless plug for
Mm-hmm.
our networking for non-networkers,
Yes.
because it's not only that safe space to be able to have that community, it's also a way to network and get your name out there and grow individually, as well as being able to help other organizations and help other businesses or wherever your life is going. I think networking has been seen as sleazy in these spaces for so long. It's not for me. It's not what I do. I'm not looking for another job right now. So why would I be networking? Like, all of this is the wrong mindset. And it's about having conversations and being able to support each other and grow individually. And then again, being able to grow as a collective and uplift the world.
Yeah.
And so, Networking for Non Networkers is a monthly 1 hour networking group, but we do things differently. It's not the best sales pitches. It's more of the conversations and learning who each other is and what spaces that you are looking to grow into and how you would like to be supported. And so, to your point, as an extension, I think that either this group or something similar in your local area, because obviously this is all online, or whatever feels right for you, is super important to get into so that you are not isolated. Sometimes it
Mm.
can be a little tricky when you are locally in doing this.
Mm-hmm.
It's double-edged sword, because airing all dirty laundry.
Yes.
It can be a double-edged sword. Um, but whatever feels right for you, definitely get that support
Yeah.
with people who understand, see you, hear you, and understand the space
Yeah.
you're in.
Yeah, definitely. And I think once again, it kind of goes as an extension is that when you start networking, you start hearing new perspectives. And
Mhm,
those perspectives are going to be really solid proofs that you're
mhm,
new, like you have a new mindset and you can start embodying that new mindset when you hear other people in the same industry or similar
mhm,
industries telling you that that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we have been working on it
mhm.
as well. When you start to hear concepts like that, when you start to hear statements like that, it can definitely kind of boost your own journey and evolution. So,
Mhm.
not networking for non-networkers. We're gonna drop that
Yes.
link, and you can reach out to both of us in the links to both of our stuff is going to be in the description that you can reach out to us. And
Yes.
eventually, when sales open for Freedom Fiesta, which is my amazing event on, it's going to be the world's largest, fingers crossed, stress management convention that is going to happen in May 2024. When that happens, when the tickets open, I will drop a link for you to purchase those tickets as well. And Tiffany here as speaker will have an amazing discount that she would like to share with you, hopefully. So we will have that going in as well. But Thank you so much for sticking around. Please drop your questions below so that we can come in and respectively respond to it from both of our perspectives. This was a very short time, and we came in with an understanding of, all right, we're going to share our thoughts and our concepts around this and what are some practical tips we can share. But
Mhm.
when you ask us solid questions that are really well formed and that have specificities in that question, we can give you a specific response to it. With that, thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed. Share your key takeaways in the section below, comment section below, and I hope you have fun. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.